Now, I have to say, you don't look like a thief.
Why, thank you.
Thank you. But you are, because what we do in America is steal from all over the world and take the recipes. We first do it, we completely muck it up. I mean, like chop suey, right?
Oh.
But then after a generation or two, we smarten up and we go back and say, well, wait a minute, maybe there's more to this recipe than we thought.
It's true.
And as we're going to do today with a classic stir fry, we're going to go figure out how to do it as authentically as possible without all the ingredients they might use 5,000 miles away.
That's right. We're going to do right by it. This recipe is yusheng, or Chinese pork and garlic sauce. And we found a lot of recipes out there that use this pork loin, which was much too lean and dry. And then the pork really never got that super silky, tender texture that it should have. A few recipes called for tenderloin, and although that is more tender, it was much too dry and mealy. We had better luck with fattier cuts like pork shoulder, or this, which is country-style spare ribs. They're a little easier to work with because they're already boneless. They don't require a lot of trim, and you can buy them in pretty small amounts, and you only need about 12 ounces for this recipe. The first thing you want to do is slice it very thinly, about 1/4 inch thick pieces, and then you take the slices of meat. You just want to make little matchsticks. And now the key to this recipe is that the meat is very velvety and soft and silky. So we found, that velveting, which is a technique we do a lot with stir fries, which is coating the meat with a little bit of cornstarch, makes it a little softer, and we're definitely going to do that. But we're going to take it a step further just to ensure that the meat is truly silky. And we're going to tenderize it. And our favorite tenderizer of choice is a teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 cup of water. And add the meat and let this sit for about 15 minutes. And it really will transform the meat into a very silky, soft texture. All right, so while that pork is sitting there, we're going to finish prepping the rest of the ingredients, starting with the sauce. We're going to start with the base, which is 1/2 cup of chicken broth. We're going to add the sweet. This is 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then the salty, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And now we're going to add the sour, and this is Chinese black vinegar. So this is 4 teaspoons of Chinese black vinegar. And you can find this sometimes in a well-stocked supermarket nowadays, but if you can't, we came up with a really good substitution. So here's what the bottle looks like if you're looking for black vinegar. The substitution being equal parts rice vinegar and balsamic vinegar. So now we're going to add a tablespoon of Chinese rice wine, or you could substitute dry sherry, and a tablespoon of sesame oil. And now we're going to add 2 ingredients that added a meaty depth of flavor that restaurants would get, and we figured out why restaurants could get it and we couldn't, because they use 2 ingredients that we would never call for. One being homemade beef broth, the other being MSG. So instead, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of fish sauce and a little bit of ketchup. This is 2 teaspoons of ketchup.
May I make a suggestion? Why don't we just break down and add MSG to our stir-fry sauce and just get it over with?
It's hard to find, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All right, and so finally, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, and this will help thicken the sauce as soon as it hits the hot skillet. Now, traditionally, this dish uses woodier mushrooms, which are really hard to find. We found a good substitute in shiitakes. Now, of course, you don't use the stem of a shiitake because it's much too tough, so you take the stem off, and now we're just going to slice them thinly. And this is 6 ounces of shiitakes. Now, the other main vegetable component in this dish is celery, and just 2 stalks of celery is all we need. And we're just going to cut it on the bias into 1/4 inch thick slices. And now onto the scallions. Now, we very often use the upper part of the scallion, the green part, separately from the bottom end. We're going to do that in this dish too, but we're going to treat the white bottoms as though it was an onion, and we're going to cook them in the dish. So I'm going to mince the white part, and the way to mince it is to cut it into quarters if it's big. Then you line them up, and then you just mince them crosswise. And we're just going to take the top green parts and slice them thinly, and we'll garnish the dish with these. And for the whites, which we're going to want to cook, we're going to add it to the garlic. Now, this is 4 cloves of garlic because it is a garlic sauce. So to this mixture, we're going to add an Asian broad bean chili paste, and you can smell it. It's a little bit spicy, but it has an earthy flavor to it. And of course, we have a substitution for this as well if you can't find it.
So this is the paste.
That's right, that's what it looks like. And if you can't find it, you can substitute either the sriracha or the chili garlic paste, but both of those are quite a bit spicier. You'd use about 2 tablespoons of the bean paste. You'd use a lot less of those too, only about 2 teaspoons. And that's it. All our prep is done. All we have to wait for is that pork to finish marinating, and we're ready to cook.
Well, it's stir fry. We're 90% finished.
Exactly.
It's all the prep.
All right, so our pork has been sitting in this mixture for about 15 minutes and everything's ready to go. So we're gonna start by heating up some oil in a 12-inch nonstick skillet, which is our preferred pan for making stir fry, not a wok. Because the stoves are flat, the pan's flat, you get the most surface area. So we're gonna let that tablespoon of oil heat up over high heat till it's just smoking, and that can take a couple minutes, so it gives us time to finish our pork. All right, so we're gonna drain this pork out of the mixture. We found it best to rinse some of that mixture off because it does have a slight soapy flavor. All right, that's pretty good. And of course, now we're gonna give it a quick dry. So I'm gonna put this dried pork back in the bowl. And I mentioned velveting earlier. We are gonna do that, which is coating the pork with a little bit of cornstarch, and it gives it a nice protective cloak that helps keep the pork tender while it cooks. So our velveting is gonna be made of 2 teaspoons of Chinese rice wine and 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. We're just gonna mix this all together and coat the pork. I see some wisps of smoke, so we're gonna start with the mushrooms. We're gonna cook them down for about 2 to 4 minutes until they slightly wilted and they've released some of their moisture. All right, so you can see the mushrooms have wilted a little bit. They're looking glossy and they've gotten tender. Okay. So now we're gonna add the celery. We're gonna cook another 2 to 4 minutes until the celery just gets tender. So that celery looks like it's gotten a little darker in color and it's a nice crisp tender. So I'm gonna take the vegetables and put them in a bowl while we cook the meat and the garlic and scallions. So we're gonna start by adding 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil back to the pan. We're gonna put it back over medium-low heat. And we're gonna cook this chili paste garlic scallion mixture for about 30 seconds until it's nice and fragrant. So I'm gonna take a tablespoon of the oil out because it's really nice to drizzle over top of the stir fry just before serving. And to this, we're gonna add the pork. We're gonna cook it very gently, again, over medium-low heat until it's just cooked through, and that can take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. All right, so that pork looks mostly cooked through. There's no signs of pink. And now we're gonna add this sauce. Of course, I wanna give it a whisk to re-emulsify that cornstarch. We're gonna add this to the skillet. Crank the heat up a little bit, get that cornstarch to come to a simmer so it can do its thickening job. Oh, doesn't that look good?
It smells great, too.
That sauce has gotten nice and thick. And now we're gonna stir in the vegetables and let them just heat through, and we're done. Oh, that looks good. It smells amazing. I'm gonna garnish with our scallion greens and our little bit of reserved spicy oil. The smell just gets me.
I tell you what, I'll eat it, you smell it. We'll have a division of labor. I've had this dish many times in restaurants, and the pork always is a little tough on the outside. There's nothing tough here.
No, it's like silk. So
great Chinese-style pork stir-fry and garlic sauce starts with country-style boneless ribs, and we marinated them with baking soda to make them tender. We used a cornstarch slurry to protect them from the heat of the pan. And we did something odd. We started with vegetables, then went to the meat over medium-low, which again keeps it very soft and tender. So there you have it. From America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, an excellent recipe for Chinese-style stir-fry pork in garlic sauce.